In this lecture, we are going to go ahead and understand an overview of the world trade. In order to understand how to determine how much trade is taken place and who trades with whom, we have a model, and this model is known as the gravity model. Now, what is a gravity model? So, a gravity model basically links two countries together, country 1 and country 2, and it tells us how trade is going to take place between two countries. Actually, this model is based on empirical relationship, and this says that there are two things which we have to consider. One, we have to consider how strong is the economy of the country, which is given by the GDP of the country. And secondly, what is the distance between two countries? So the gravity model actually goes ahead and suggests that the amount of export and import, which is basically the amount of trade, this amount of trade basically goes ahead, and this amount of trade actually depends on the distance between the two countries, and it depends on the economy of the two countries. So in particular, let's take an example. For example, we have seen that US, it trades heavily with Germany, UK, France, and this is where it has the highest, these are the countries which have the highest value of GDP, which means US trades with those countries where the GDP is high. Using the same gravity model, it is also seen that there is some relationship between the distance and the trade and the borders also, international borders. So those countries which have friendly international borders, which allow easy movement of goods and services, where there are less import quotas, where there are less tariffs, these are the countries where good amount of trade takes place as compared to the other countries. So two things: US, from the empirical data, it seems trades heavily with the countries who have high GDP, which means that your trade is a function of the GDP of the countries, and it also is affected by how much is the distance between two countries, and also how friendly are the borders of the two countries. Based on this, we can go ahead and we can actually come up with an equation that tells us the trade or the value of trade between two countries, country I and J. And this tells us that the value of trade between country I and J, this actually is dependent on a constant term A. It depends on the GDP of country I, on the GDP of country J, and inversely with the distance between the two countries. So this is how it is. A is any constant. Tij is the value of trade between country I and J. Yi is country I's GDP. Yj is country J's GDP. And Dij is the distance between two countries I and J. So let's read this out. The value of trade between any two countries is proportional, other things equal, to the product of two countries' GDP, and diminishes with the distance between the two countries. This is known as the gravity model. So this model, we call it as the gravity model. Now, for the general version of the gravity model, we say that we can actually go ahead and we write this as Tij is equal to A into Yi A into YJB upon DIJC, where A, B, C are basically the values which are chosen that fit the data well. So this is done using econometrics regression. You just have to understand that this is a simple model which says that trade directly depends on GDP of the two countries and inversely on the distance between the two countries. Now the question is, does this gravity model actually work? Have we seen this model working in the past? So the answer is, we can go ahead and see this in the past transactions that have taken place. We have actually seen that the countries which have large income actually do a large amount of transactions with the rest of the world. So this is true that if you have large economy, you spend large amount of income on imports. So whenever the income of the country increases, not only the demand of products that are within the country increase, but also you increase the demand of the products that are produced outside the country, which means you increase imports. So this is what has been seen. So it has also been seen that when you transact with the rest of the world, you get more trade from countries which have higher GDP. So other things holding constant, trade between two economies is larger is either of the economy. Now let's go ahead and let's see about the distance.